What if I told you the reason you're bad at learning has nothing to do with intelligence? You've sat in that chair before? Highlighter in one hand, coffee going cold in the other, staring at the same paragraph for the fifth time because none of it is sticking. You start to wonder if maybe you're just not built for this. Maybe some people are wired to absorb information and you're not one of them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You were never taught how to learn, you were taught what to learn. Nobody ever sat you down and explained the actual mechanics of getting information into your brain and keeping it there. So you've spent your whole life running the wrong software and blaming yourself for the crash today. That changes. I'm going to hand you the exact method the fastest learners on Earth use without even realizing they're using it. And the last one on this list is the one that actually rewires how your brain treats effort itself. Stick around for that one, because it changes everything else on this list. Let's start with the first shift, and it's going to sound almost too simple. Stop trying to learn everything. Most of what's in a textbook, a course, or a tutorial barely matters. A small slice of the material does almost all the heavy lifting. Say you're learning a language. You don't need 5,000 words. You need about 1,000 of the right ones and the handful of sentence patterns that let you use them. Say you're learning to cook. You don't need 40 techniques. You need to nail 4 or 5 and repeat them until they're boring. Sound familiar? You've probably spent hours polishing details. Nobody was ever going to test you on. The fastest learners aren't smarter. They're just ruthless about what they ignore. Here's the thing though. Even once you know what to focus on, most people still learn it backwards. Second shift. You need to fail on purpose, and you need to do it fast. Think about 2 people learning to play chess. One of them reads books for a month before ever touching a board. The other loses 10 games in a week. Guess who improves faster? The one who's losing, because losing is data. Every mistake tells your brain exactly where the gap is. If you never miss, you never find out what you don't know, which means you're not actually learning anything, you're just consuming. This is where a trick called active recall comes in, and it's borderline unfair how well it works. Close the book. Ask yourself to explain the topic out loud like you're teaching it to someone else. The second you stumble, that's the gap. Write it down, go find the answer, then close the book again and keep going. You're forcing yourself to fail every few minutes instead of once at the end, and that's exactly why it works. Compare that to how most people actually study. They read a chapter, nod along because it feels familiar, and call it learned. That feeling of familiarity is lying to you. Recognizing an idea on a page and being able to produce it from nothing are 2 completely different skills, and only one of them shows up when you actually need the information. Active recall closes that gap because it doesn't let you coast on recognition. It forces production every single time. But here's what's crazy. Even people who master the first 2 shifts still sabotage themselves with the third one. They try to learn too many things in the same sitting. Picture someone trying to improve their public speaking by fixing their posture, their tone, their pacing, and their vocabulary all in one practice session. They walk away maybe 1% better at each. Now picture someone who spends that same session on pacing and nothing else. They walk away dramatically better at one thing instead of barely better at 4. Your brain has a limited amount of bandwidth for new information in a day. Split it 4 ways and you're diluting every drop of it. Your brain, like your body, has a recovery limit. Respect it, and it pays you back with retention. Ignore it, and you get that foggy, nothing sticking feeling by hour 2. This applies to basically every skill you'll ever try to build. Learning a sport. Master one movement before adding the next. Getting better at chess. Learn one opening deeply before touching complex strategy. Becoming a stronger speaker. Fix your pacing and clarity before you ever worry about sounding impressive. It feels slower in the moment. It isn't. Depth-first learning compounds and breadth-first learning just spreads you thin. And now, the part almost nobody talks about, the one that decides whether any of the first 3 shifts even work. You have to actually believe you're capable of getting good at this. Not in a vague motivational poster way, in a genuinely stubborn, almost irrational way. Picture 2 people starting the exact same skill from zero. One of them thinks talent is fixed, so every stumble feels like proof they don't have what it takes, and they quietly quit within a week. The other one thinks ability is built, not born, so every stumble is just information, and they're still showing up a month later. Same starting point, completely different trajectory. That gap has a name. It's called a growth mindset, and it is the single biggest predictor of who sticks with something long enough to get good at it. You already have proof this works. Nobody handed you the ability to walk, talk, or read. You failed at all 3 constantly as a toddler and kept going anyway because quitting wasn't on the table. The belief that you'll eventually figure it out isn't naive. It's the exact mechanism that got you every skill you already have. And if the thing you're learning actually matters to you, this belief needs to tip into something closer to obsession. It should be the thing you're half thinking about in the shower or replaying in your head while you're falling asleep. That's the difference between somebody who dabbles and somebody who becomes genuinely dangerous at what they do. So here's your cheat sheet. Cut the material down to the 20% that actually moves the needle. Fail on purpose as fast as possible, and use active recall to force those failures early. Build one skill at a time instead of splitting your focus 4 ways. And believe, almost stubbornly, that you're capable of getting there. None of this requires more hours in the day. It just requires spending the hours you already have correctly. You didn't need more time. You needed the manual nobody gave you. Now you have it.